Welcome back and thank you for keeping it NTV. You are still watching NTV Weekend Edition. Now this week, Parliament passed the Income Tax Amendment Bill for 2023, which seeks to impose more taxes while lowering thresholds in some areas. Now the bill, yet to be published and approved by the head of state, is a pointer to how stiff the next fiscal year will be. Now to help us appreciate what is at play, we do have George Mutumba, a tax consultant. Good evening and thank you for joining us, George.
Thank you, Mildred, once again for hosting me here.
Okay, now straight into it. Let's start this conversation by understanding, or by you explaining to us, what are some of the tax amendment bill changes that people out there should look out for?
Mildred, as you've already looked at I'm sure you've looked at the social media, and one of the key amendments that is causing uproar is the fact that now government has moved a step forward to tax all transactions through withholding tax on sale, something that was not already being done. Then we've also seen that previously, as a way of promoting the investment culture, the government has been exempting the collective investment schemes to the extent that all the profits have been distributed to the people. But now we've seen that they've moved a step forward to actually repeal that. Then you'll also see for businesses, they've moved forward. Previously, in Uganda's tax regime, we were able to carry forward losses infinitely. As long as you make a loss, next year, you actually carry forward that loss. But now in the new amendment bills, we can actually see that the government is now providing that in the 50th year, after the 50th year, the next year you'll only be able to claim 50% of the losses. So basically, it's like sending out a message that they expect within 5 years your business should be able to, should be able to have taken off or started making profits. Otherwise, if it hasn't, then you get penalized for not having made profits by only carrying forward 50% of such losses. I think that is a bit unfortunate, because how many businesses have a payback period of 5 years? It's such a very short time, and especially when you're looking at multinationals and any other business, even a very small business, 5 years is such a very short time. So I think those are the key three things that are making headlines, which you can say are losses on our side.
So bringing it closer, share with us some of the changes that are likely to, affect the common person when it comes to the tax payer, a common person. How is this likely to affect them?
Okay, the common person. Of course, one of the key things that we are seeing here is the bit of sale of property. The implication today is that anything that you sell, if you sell your phone, whether it's a business, you see previously, if I was selling a business asset, I was taxed on that. Now, when you look at the new amendment bill, it means that whatever you're selling is actually going to be taxed by the taxman at 5%.
Regardless of whether it is making profit or not.
Or loss. You see, previously, the tax law was actually looking at the profit you make on sale. That if I bought something at 1 million and I'm selling it at 1 million, there was no profit on that. But now there's complete total disregard of whether you've made a profit on such a transaction or not by, one, introducing 5% as a final tax. Yes, you don't be taxed more, but I should only be taxed where there is a profit, where I have made a profit. But when you disregard the expenses I've incurred, when you disregard the depreciation, it means that basically you're taxing a transaction irrespective of whether it's a business transaction or not, which again is very unfortunate. And
still on the same, explain to us why you think government is moving away from taxing just sale of business assets and taxing any business transaction.
Well, of course, I would not speak for government, but definitely we all know that in any budget, a budget has to be funded. And as you move to collect more and more taxes, sometimes you come up with strategies. But understanding where government is coming from, sometimes it's also actually hard to make a difference between what's a business asset, what's a business transaction, and what is not. But in whatever happens, I think government should be targeting people doing business and not people doing private transactions. So in this kind of matter,
when you talk about private transactions, could you explain to us and help us understand, for instance, if I'm selling a phone to you, is that something that government can tax? Is that a private transaction that we could be talking about here?
One, look here, yes. Now, when I talk about a private transaction, look at this. I have my phone. God forbid, my father is sick. I bought it 2 million, right? I'm now selling it at 1 million to pay bills. I'm not making a profit on it. It's not a business. I'm just disposing of an asset for which I'm not making a profit. So such a transaction should not be taxed because I've already suffered actually losses. So by taxing me on such a transaction, I'm actually making losses twice. And I'm sure you know that one of the key tenets of tax is the element of equity. I should be taxed where it's fair for me to, where I've made a profit. So, but now when you look at the amendment, it completely disregards that effect of, has someone made a profit? Is someone trading or not? That kind of
So does it mean that if I have sold the phone to you privately, I still have to pay the tax for that?
When you look at the current amendment, oh yes, you must pay 5%, irrespective of whether you've made a profit on that or not, so irrespective of how long you've used the phone. How
is this going to be tracked?
Now, you see, and this is something I think the government needs to look at. You see, when you bring out laws, for the government to be able to collect more taxes, it's important that we look at the implementation bit. For land, it's very easy that when I sell to you land, at the point someone is transferring the land, that can be tracked. But a transaction between a person who is not registered for taxes and another party, that cannot be tracked. So even when that is there, we are yet to see, we are looking out for the numbers and see, I mean, we can only wait for the numbers and see how effective this kind of amendment will be. But otherwise it becomes very hard to you know, and given our very big informal sector, some of these transactions are very hard to track. So I think the government needs to, again, keep more on the formal sector where we are able to track these. Otherwise it becomes a redundant law.
Yes. So are there any tax advantages that people can look out for when it comes to this new bill that was passed by Parliament?
Oh, yes. Just like what happened in 2020, just after COVID, again, this year, we are seeing that the minister has moved very quickly, and they have provided for an exemption. All we can say, yes, it's an exemption, but they'll be forgiving people who have any tax penalties as at 30th June, on condition, penalties and interest, on condition that by 31st December 2023, you've paid out your entire principal. So it means that any penalties and interest. But again, we've had in the past similar, in 2020, we had a similar, something similar being brought into the law, but we can only see its effectiveness was not as highly, probably as anticipated, because of the way the Uganda Revenue Authority implemented this. Because if you're going to look at my tax ledger and say, well, as long as you paid any money, whether it was in relation to that interest, then they will knock off that first. So I still think there is need again for that to be effective, and for the Omuntu who wants it to gain from it, there is need to manage the revenue collector and the policy people, such that such very good policies, people are able to gain from them, as would be the spirit behind the amendment. Well, then there's also something about the, when you look at the tax law, it limits the interest rates, how much interest you can claim to actually about 30% on your loans. But you see that the minister is moving to open it up for people who are getting loans from the MDIs.
Finance, yeah. Microfinancing.
Yes, the MDIs. So I think that would be a very good thing for the SMEs, because the MDIs, you see that the people who have a very good network that reaches the people down there, and then even their requirements are a bit relaxed, so people are able to get credit. But in getting the credit, you're also able to get the entire, able to claim the entire interest. So I think that is a plus. And to Mutumbwa ones, because they're the ones who go to the MDIs, they're the ones who go to the tier 4 financial institutions.
Money, yes.
Why? Because probably the banks have a higher risk appetite. They have higher restrictions on who they can lend to. So for me, I think that's a big win if the MDIs take advantage of it and further even reach out to people to get these loans, since the interest is now, the more interest is deductible from them. Well, so I think those are the wins we are seeing here. Okay.
Well, still on the bill, apart from doing away with the incentives for the investors, now this bill has introduced a wider range of tax on digital transactions. Now, how do you think this is going to affect the new business, the new internet-based businesses?
Okay, we all know that the government and probably the policymakers have been struggling on how to tax this guy who makes a cent in Uganda without setting up an office here. But somehow Ugandans are paying for that. So for us as Ugandans, I think this is a plus. It's important that everyone who makes a profit should pay tax. But the government has been struggling on how do you track this guy? Where do you find him? He's out of this country. He's dealing in air. You get it? So of course, you see, over time, you must see that actually, when you look at the amendments, it's very clear that the government has now realized the easiest way of collecting money. I mean, the easier way is through withholding tax, right? Yes. So that's why they're now placing that 5% that, in case you deal with that guy, we are going to look for you. We are not going to look for him because he's not here, but you was paid for the service. But again, the ability of government to collect that tax will highly be dependent on which people those guys are dealing with. You and me, who is a private guy in my home, not doing any business, that may be hard to track. But you, when you go to claim that expense in your returns, then the URA is able to look at it and say, you spent on this, you're claiming it, you should give us the 5%. So I think that is that's a win. Sometimes we need to appreciate where good efforts are being done. Well,
George, as we conclude this conversation, to the casual observer out there, why do we have the annual amendments of these bills?
Okay. When you look at, this is not only Uganda, everywhere in the world, but specifically for Uganda, when you look at what we call the Public Finance Management Act, it requires the president every single year to cause, one, the preparation of an annual spend, what we call an annual budget for government. And this must be laid out. Two, Parliament must be laid before Parliament, 15 days before the end of the financial year. Now, of course, because of that process, the budget now, but we now go to the budget. The budget, the budget is made up of incomes and expenses. So in trying to look at where are we going to get income, what's the main source of income for government? Taxes. So now, in trying to look at strategies on how to collect more or not, it means that you're going to definitely have to amend the income, the tax laws somewhere, so that you're able to collect more from somewhere, collect less by probably promoting certain sectors, because in the long run, when there is fraud, you're able to make more money. Well, thank you so much, George Mutumba, for making time, a tax consultant, to help us understand what is in store for you and I, the taxpayer. Well, we do take a break, but NTV Weekend Edition continues shortly.